بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. My name is Dr. Faraj Shihri and I would like to welcome everybody joining us today. It is a really good chance to take this program with our well-known trainers. I would say to each individual of you, I would say thank you for taking care of yourself by making this decision to learn more and more about some of the most important topics and trends, starting actually from this week where we can gain really good soft skills. Now I would like to invite Dr. Khalid Al-Anizi, Assistant Dean for Student Activities and Program, to speak. So please, Dr. Khalid.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear brothers and colleagues, good morning, and I hope you are doing fine in the situation going on. And please, if you allow me, I'm going to switch gears to speak in Arabic to introduce you to this unique and special program designed for KFUBM students. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. إخواني الطلاب، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كل عام وأنتم بخير، وتقبل الله منا ومنكم الطاعات وصالح الأعمال. بادئ ذي بدء نشكر الله عز وجل على أن من علينا بالنجاح الباهر للفصل الدراسي الماضي رغم جميع الصعوبات التي واجهها العالم بأسره، وليس فقط الجامعات بسبب جائحة الفيروس كورونا، ولكن بفضل الله عز وجل أولاً، ثم بتكاتف جميع منسوبي الجامعة من إدارة وأعضاء هيئة التدريس وموظفين وطلاب، استطعنا أن نتغلب على جميع الصعوبات وأن نقود سفينة الجامعة إلى بر الأمان. كما لا يفوتني أن أشيد بالجهود الحكومية المبذولة في هذا الصدد والتعامل الحكيم الذي ينطلق من الحرص على سلامة الجميع، وأذكر نفسي وإياكم بالحرص على اتباع التعليمات واتخاذ الإجراءات الاحتياطية التي دعت إليها الجهات الرسمية حفاظاً على سلامتكم وسلامة جميع من حولكم. إخواني الطلاب، إن من مميزات المؤسسات الناجحة تحويل الأوقات الصعبة إلى فرص واعدة مفيدة، وهذا ما دعا جامعة الملك فهد للبترول والمعادن إلى إطلاق هذا البرنامج كلاس خلال الفصل الصيفي، وهو برنامج يجمع بين مهارات المستقبل وبين مبادئ الثورة الصناعية الرابعة، مما لا يسع الطالب الجامعي أن يجهله أيا كان تخصصه في ظل التطورات التقنية والتحولات الرقمية التي نعيشها اليوم. إن هذا البرنامج فرصة كبيرة للطالب الجامعي تساعده على استغلال أوقاته بما يعود عليه بالنفع ويزيد من حصيلته العلمية في هذه المجالات الحيوية، وبالتالي يرفع الطالب أسهمه في سوق العمل ويعطيه ميزة تنافسية في سباق التوظيف الذي لم يعد معتمداً فقط على المعدل الدراسي، إذ أن كثير من الفرص الوظيفية أصبحت تعتمد وبشكل كبير على مهارات المستقبل، مثل مهارات القيادة، مهارات الحوار، العمل الجماعي، التفكير الناقد إلى آخره، وكذلك تتطلب قدراً كبيراً من المعرفة الكافية في مجالات الذكاء الاصطناعي، الأمن السيبراني، علم البيانات، الإنترنت الأشياء إلى آخرها. ومما يميز هذا البرنامج إخواني أنه يقدمه نخبة من المتخصصين في هذه المجالات التقنية، ممن يملكون يعني خبرة عملية طويلة في سوق العمل، ويعرفون احتياجات سوق العمل المتجددة والمتطورة، وكذلك عندهم خبرة عريضة في التدريب. لذلك أحث الجميع على الاستفادة القصوى من هذه الفرصة الذهبية، والاهتمام بالحضور اليومي وتدوين الملاحظات والتفاعل مع المسارات بالسؤال والمناقشات العلمية والاستعداد الجيد للاختبارات التي تضمن للطالب الحصول على شهادة علمية معتمدة في هذه المجالات. ختاماً إخواني الطلاب، الجامعة لم تدخر جهداً في الإعداد والتحضير لهذا البرنامج، آملين أن يحقق لكم التطلعات وأن يكون منطلقاً لكم للإبحار في هذه العلوم المفيدة. كما يسعدنا ويشرفنا أن تشاركونا آراءكم ومقترحاتكم واستفساراتكم في أي وقت خلال هذا البرنامج، من خلال إيميل العماد الرسمي ومن خلال صفحة كلاس على الإنترنت التي أرسلت لكم مسبقا. أتمنى لكم النجاح في هذا البرنامج، وأتمنى لكم التوفيق خلال هذه الإجازة الصيفية، كما أسأل الله عز وجل أن يحفظكم ويحفظ من تحبون، ويحفظ بلادنا وبلاد المسلمين من كل شر وسوء ومكروه. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you, Dr. Khalid. We actually, inshallah, now we move to Mr. Wataf, but just for your information, inshallah, Mr. Jamal will take you to let's say into a tour through the platform, inshallah, today, inshallah, afternoon. So now let's start our, I would say, excited learning journey with Mr. Charles Wataf. So, and they would say to everybody, have a good day. Thank you.
Dr. Faraj, thank you very much, and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome everybody to your soft skills training. And I would like to introduce myself first. And I am Charles Wataf. I was commissioned from the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst quite some time ago, and I served in the Army for 17 years. I then was a visiting lecturer at the Royal Military College of Science at Shrivenham for a little while, before I became a supply chain consultant and working in the defence industry. I then became a consultant with Bearing Point, and that is a European management and technology consultancy. And one of my roles there was managing the MOD's logistic data warehouse. So I have a lot of experience with data and managing that. And then I moved out to Bearing Point and I founded my company called New Behaviors, which is providing coaching and psychological soft skills to help organizations achieve their goals. And that's where I want to start. This week, I'm going to take you into a journey into your psychological mind. And we're going to look about what drives how we communicate. And I want to provide you with an understanding of some theory and of some communication, of some theory of the communication, and in practice, tips and skills for you to engage effectively, and also help you with your professional and private lives. So let's just have a quick look at our classroom setup. What we are seeing here is that we're on our Zoom platform and we're in a virtual forum. You have your Prism offline course assets for access, and also there's going to be some assessments as well. I want to make this as interactive as possible, and I will be having polls and Zoom online, and we're going to do Q&A and some daily recalls and quizzes, and there's going to be a final course assessment. Now, just bear with me. I just need to refer quickly to one of the panelists. So I'm just going to put myself on mute for us. Okay, I think actually you might have been seeing my screen one. I actually work with two screens here, so hopefully you are seeing the right screen share here. Yes, I think you are. Good. Right. So we're on that. Now, an ability to communicate effectively can often lead to frustration and conflict. And therefore, it is worth investing some time in improving your communication skills. Because with soft skills, sorry, we're just going to have to pause here. I have some panelists raising some hands. So I'm just going to have a little look at that. That's not there. Here. Okay, raising a hand. Okay, I'm just going to have a quick pause here.
Charles, I think you can resume with the session. Let me handle with the raised hands for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. That's much appreciated.
I got you covered.
Okay, that's great. Right, so where were we? Let's just get back. Yes, it's worth investing time with soft skills because if we don't work on these ourselves, don't be surprised, actually, if you don't improve, as it's only by trying these things out and working on them and putting yourself out there that actually you will be able to improve and develop. And that's what we're all about. And that's what this week's all about. And that's why I'm so excited to be with you today. Right, let's get started on what is the course overview. Well, we're going to go on this nice journey together. And day one, we're going to look at what is a difficult conversation. And we're going to look at how that is constructed. Day two, we're going to look at mastering difficult conversations. And there's lots of underlying skills and practice and ideas that I'm going to share with you for that. Day three, we move on and we're going to get into a creative thinking space and doing some problem solving work as well. Day four, we're going to look at more interpersonal skills and how your personality and behaviors connect with each other and how we can use that in teams and for the benefit of being a great leader and a good manager. And finally, day five is about training and coaching, because as you progress through your careers, you will be involved in training. And that could be at a low level, just within your team itself, or even you may want to be a trainer one day. And so I'm just going to introduce to you a number of concepts and some theory behind training, which will act as a foundation and a platform for you to develop some thoughts on. And if you do training one day, it's an anchor point for you as well. So let's get straight on with the course. Now, we have a number of objectives. The first objective is that I want to develop within you an appreciation of the fundamentals of how humans communicate. I also want to develop knowledge that enables you to manage challenging and difficult conversations. I want you to understand how to increase your personal creativity and utilize problem-solving techniques effectively. I also want to develop in you an understanding of different personality types and how this applies to organizations and also interpersonal behavior. And also to understand the importance of influence here and the approaches to develop that to a competence. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, those fundamentals of training, to understand those as a process and to understand the skills and qualities required of a good trainer. The course is broken into a number of modules, and you can see on today we're going to do 3 modules: understanding difficult conversations, choice of participation, and working with difficult conversations. And then we will go through the other days. I won't go through those now, but as you can see, it's a busy program and it's an engaging program, something I'm very excited about. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Today we're going to look at the meaning of a difficult conversation and what can be construed as a difficult conversation. We also need to examine why they occur. And also I want to have a little look at some scenarios here for a difficult conversation, because by introducing you to these areas, then you'll be a little forewarned and you can actually prepare yourself and be on the lookout for these moments, and therefore you'll be able to prepare and get the best out of that conversation. So let's have a little think about defining the meaning of a difficult conversation. And to do this, we need to understand some fundamentals of psychology. And we're just going to have a little look at some neurology, because I want to take you inside your mind. And we're going to start with feelings. Now, ask yourself this question: what is a feeling? And I want to refer you to some outstanding work by one of the world's most leading neuroscientists. Is a gentleman called Professor Antonio Damasio. And if you have an opportunity to read any of his books, I strongly recommend it. Now, when Damasio is looking at feelings, he's not really interested in whether they're positive or negative, but he's looking at their content. And what he's looking to do is make a direct connection to the content of that feeling with a particular mode of thinking. So, for example, if you're out with friends, you're relaxing, you're having a great time, and you feel good about yourself, there are 2 consequences to that good feeling. The first is that those themes are connected with an emotion. And secondly, it's connected with a mode of thinking. And this is a style of mental processing. And what comes out of that process is a direct mode of behavior, which is directly related to what we feel inside. And that's how we behave then and how we interact with each other. So consequently, if we're not getting a good feeling inside, then it's connected to a more negative emotion. And then that is going to dictate what sort of behavior we show and display and how we interact with others. So what I'd like to do now is show you actually what is going on inside our brain and have a look at where those emotions and our thinking starts to connect. So let's just go on a new screen share here. And I need to just in show. And And here we have going on a new share. And I'm going to put you on here, this site here. Okay, so you hopefully should be seeing my screen here, and we are on a great site called brainfacts.org. And this allows us to have a little look at what is going on. So when we are looking at our emotions, the first thing I want to take you to is our limbic area. Now, let's find the limbic system. Here we go. And as you can see, the limbic system is a large group of brain structures that is responsible for motivation, emotion, and learning and memory. And it is this area here which actually is the oldest part of your brain. And that's important because this allowed us to survive and develop over the thousands of years that we have been on Earth. And as you can see in the description, it is where all our emotions come from. And then the important thing about this is it is really, really strong and has a dominant influence on how you behave. I'm now going to take you to the different area, which is our prefrontal cortex, because our prefrontal cortex is our thinking area. It has the ability to make more complex and socially minded decisions. And it's important because this actually has a controlling hand, a guiding hand on our reactive center, and it allows us to show what our unique personalities are, and it is what it makes us human. So the key 2 points I'd like you to take away from just having a little look at this is that, firstly, all the signaling, everything we take in on a day-to-day basis goes through our emotional center first. And some of those traits of emotional thinking are jumping to opinions, thinking only in black and white, thinking catastrophically, maybe irrationally and quite emotive. And it could also equally be euphoric. And then here in our prefrontal cortex, the other point is that this is where we learn first, is how we control ourselves. And if you're using your logical mind to control yourself and control your behavior and try and suppress those emotions, if you're feeling those negative moments inside, that is the start of having a good conversation. And letting your emotions run away with you, that is where you starting to get into a difficult conversation territory. So I'm just going to just keep that up on the screen there. And I just want to tell you a story. An early example of this is that there are 2 different personalities on our head. And this was identified that when a gentleman called Phineas Gage was working, and he lived around the late 19th century, and he worked for a railway company in America. And his job was to clear away the tracks by blowing away boulders that were actually too big to move manually. I think what we'll do, we'll just come out of this, go for a new share. And then we go on, hopefully me. Okay. Okay, and what Phineas Gage was doing was he was packing explosives, and beneath the boulder and he packed explosives beneath the boulder. And then he had to tap them down with a thick iron rod before lighting the fuse. Now, Gage had been chosen to do this work because he was shown to be sober and responsible. However, one time Gage allowed himself to become distracted at a crucial moment. And what happened is this caused a spark. And it struck the boulder and it created a spark which resulted in an explosion which jettisoned the iron bar through his eye socket, out through his head. And with it, it took out a clean part of his frontal lobe. Now, what is quite remarkable is that Gage himself survived. And he managed to get away from where he was, he got down to the very rudimentary medical services on the railway camp. He was patched up and he ended up blind in one eye. But what is really interesting, and this is one of the most important things and early understandings in psychology and behavior, is that his personality was completely altered. He became foul-mouthed, aggressive, impulsive, and effectively what was happened, his logical center was destroyed. And what he was left with was his limbic, his reactive area. And as I said, this is based on pure emotions. And as a consequence, Gage was actually found to and be seen to have moments of great joy, great euphoria, but also he could very quickly, at a flick of the fingers, a turn of a button, he could become moody and aggressive. And that demonstrated that inside you, there are two contrasting personalities going on inside. Now, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman studied this, and he's written a great book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is here. Now, again, this is a fantastic book, and it is also based upon this premise that we have two contrasting personalities, two ways of thinking going on inside our mind. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if we can demonstrate this now with yourselves. And I have got a quick little problem for you today. Here it is. A bat and ball costs $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Okay, I'm going to open some polling. You should be able to get this. I'm launching the poll now, and I want your answer. Okay, I'm going to hold it open for another 15 seconds. You've got to be quick here. Let's go. Let's go. That's great. Keep going. We're halfway there. I'm going to keep you going. Keep you going. Let's see if we can get to over 2,000. Fantastic. Okay, we're nearly there. We're still, people are on 10. People are on 10. Right. Ending the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, polls ended. Right, that's really interesting. Thank you so much. So what we are finding here is that I've got approximately 2/3 of you thinking the answer is 10 cents. I've got about another third thinking it's 5. And I've got the remainder on just a few on 15. Okay. The interesting thing is the actual answer is 5 cents. So let's just share those results there. Okay. So I'm going to put that on the screen there. I think hopefully that might share the results. Now, I'm not going to go out into the, we'll stop that sharing now, and we'll come after that. Now, I'm not going to go into the maths now, because that's something maybe you want to have a little look at, but you're looking for an answer of 5 cents. Now, what the key point about this is that you were thinking with your emotional center at that point in time, because you look at it, and that's exactly what I did. You look at it, oh, I think it's 10 cents. The actual answer is 5 cents. You have to step back. And therefore, the learning, what I want you to take away from this exercise is that by just taking a step back when you're presented with a problem, you will be able to see things much more clearly. Okay, well done. Now let's move on. Why do difficult conversations occur? So let's just have a look at this. Now, let's look at the definition firstly. A difficult conversation is where two parties are engaged, where there are different opinions, perceptions, needs, and wants. Feelings and emotions will run strong, and the consequences or stakes for us are, or stakes for the parties, are actually quite significant. So I think the best way for me to describe this, and actually for you to get a feeling of what a difficult conversation in an organization might look like, if I can get my clicking to work in the right places, I've got a short YouTube clip of such a conversation. So just ending the slideshow now, and I am going to go on a, you should hopefully be seeing, let's go on a new share. Should be seeing screen 2. And let's go onto this. Okay. Right. Could I ask Nick if you could just confirm that you are hearing the sound when I press play, please?
Yes, I do, Charles.
Hi, Carol. I did, yes. Take a seat.
Okay.
Charles, could you increase the volume a little bit? Probably.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes, Nick.
Able to hear vaguely.
You can hear it.
Pretty low though. Could you just enable the settings so that we can hear the computer audio as well?
Yes, I will just have a little look at that.
Yes.
They're getting on all right.
Yeah, growing
We
as
should
they
be on
do.
that. Right?
It's
They're
perfect.
getting
Cost
on
me a
okay.
fortune.
you.
Yeah, they're fine.
Good, good. Well, it's nice to talk to you about your family, but I wanted to talk to you about something else today. So
Okay.
I want to talk to you about some invoices that you didn't send out last week.
Invoices?
Yeah,
Not
particularly
sent
the
out?
Gibbs account.
Me?
Yes, you.
Gibbs? That can't have been me. No, I did all my work last week. I was up to date. I caught up with it and put it in the post. The post room, Jim in the post room. I've noticed sometimes when I go in there, he doesn't always send all the letters out. I think there's a problem
Well,
there. You might want to look at
Even
that.
if it was Jim on this occasion, it's not the first time you've not sent invoices out, is it?
No, I can't remember ever not doing anything
Well, I'm
like
sure
that.
there's been a few times. The Gibbs
Sure,
people
but
rang me.
how do you know you're
Well,
sure?
the Gibbs people rang me up saying that they were willing to pay and ready to pay the invoice, and they haven't had it again.
Oh.
then, is it?
No, that's not true. I've always done my work. I always make sure.
And if they don't pay, there's not any money for wages, including yours.
I was very busy last week. I mean, you know yourself, Louise was off. She was off sick. I had to answer the phones.
Yeah.
I was doing 2 jobs. You know I was. How can I do all that work of 2 people and get all the...
We're all busy, but it's not the first time this happened, Carol, is
But I
it?
had to cover. I was doing 2 jobs last week. You know I was doing 2 jobs. I was covering for her, doing her work and my work. Yeah, okay, maybe 1 or 2 slipped through the net. Sounds as though...
All I'm asking you to do is do your job. Do the job that you paid for.
Are you saying I'm not doing my job properly?
Well, I'm saying that if everybody did the job like you did, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
This is just awful. This is... Why are you picking on me? I'm really upset about it, Nick.
Well, I just needed to do the job that you paid for, Carol. Well, clearly...
Well, why don't you do the job you're paid to do, which is to manage properly, and then you manage the account in an effective manner, and you manage Louise, who doesn't turn up 2 days out of 5. No wonder we're in the state if you can't organise when people are off and deal with people who are absent.
Well, it's not my
ridiculous.
staff just did what I asked them to do, and you
do.
included, then things would be a lot better.
I do over and above. I do more.
Well, I'm not just blaming you, but if everybody were like you, not sending things out, we'd have a real
this
problem.
This is getting personal. I'm really not happy. This is just not...
Well, all I'm asking you to do, Carol, is your job.
Well, I'm going to make a complaint. This is just not good enough. I'm going to complain to my representative.
If everybody did the job that they paid for in this organisation, we'd all be a lot better
I'm not listening to this. This is just ridiculous. You're having a right go.
Then, if that's the way you want to do things, then...
Really, I don't know what else to say because I've run out of words to this anymore.
Well,
I'm
if
going.
that's your attitude,
I'm going.
I'll have to
I've had
speak to you
enough.
when you
I'm
calm
off.
down.
Okay, wow. That got a bit out of hand, didn't it? Let's just go back to the other screen. Okay, let's just go to here. Minimize that. Go on a new share. Let's get back to our slides. And there we go. I think we're all in the right place. Good news. Okay, so wow, what a conversation. And I wanted to share that with you because I felt that actually by seeing a difficult conversation, you actually can start to get an appreciation of what they're like and how they can escalate quite quickly. Now, let's have a quick look here. Have we got another poll? Okay, so I'm going to put that to one side there. A few things that I picked out of that video. Firstly, surprised that the subject was raised. There was a reaction to blame others. There was accusations flying around all over the place. Then came denial. Then there was worry and pressure and stress was coming out. And then did you notice that during that, the administrator herself went into an accuse mode? She said, well, if you're not doing your job, if you did your job better. So she's now blaming other people. And this resulted in those accusations to say that her boss was not doing his job. Then we had exasperation. Then we had more blame. And then right at the end, the administrator thought the manager was being personal. And boom, we go straight into escalation mode. Both sides were digging in, and there was no clear resolution to the meeting and to the interview. Now, did you notice how the administrator was getting more and more excited as she went through the interview there? And it's those reactions I want you to lock onto, because it's those reactions that are connected to that emotional center, that limbic center in your brain. But the manager actually remained calm, which is good. And that's exactly what he should have done. However, he wasn't giving in. And he actually was throwing a few barbed comments back to say, well, if you were doing your job better, we wouldn't be in this situation. Whoa, you know. So actually, whilst he was remaining calm, he was allowing his reactive center just to sneak in there. Okay, we need to lead conversations with our logic, with our emotional center. Okay, I think we might have a quick poll. No, we're not going to move on to that one. I'm going to move straight on to the next slide, I think. Here we are. So, sample of scenarios for dealing with difficult conversations. Now, this data here and this list here was produced by the Chartered Management Institute in the UK. And it was a survey which was done a couple of years ago on example scenarios for difficult conversations and why they occur. And what we're looking at here is pay, behavior, and feedback are right up the top there. Okay, pay, 33%. Inappropriate behavior, 31%. And then feedback on that poor performance, 30%. Then the rest are as follows. Quite interestingly, the relationships, money, and health, they're actually right at the bottom. You know, they were below 20%. So, and the other interesting thing, which isn't shown in here, but came out in the narrative of the survey, is that more than half of the people who were questioned said they had to deal with a difficult conversation at least once a month. Now that's quite high in my mind. And 61% of the people told the survey that they would like to learn more about how to manage workplace conversations with confidence. And therefore understanding and the ability to deal with this is a fundamentally important skill. And this training today, what we're doing over the next few days, is a great place to start. Okay, what I'm going to do is we're going to go into very shortly we're going to do a few questions, I hope, very shortly. And what I want to do is firstly do a quick summary for you. So firstly, there are two dominant thinking processes in your brain at once, and we're going to call them the reactive system, which is your limbic system responsible for your emotions, and your logical system, which is your prefrontal cortex. And this is responsible for complex decision-making and socially minded decisions. And for this course, I'm going to call that your logical center. It's your human center. The next point I want to make is that your reactive center is faster and it's stronger than your logical center. And therefore, to manage yourself, you need to be consciously aware of the emotions which you are feeling and ask yourself a key question. Who's in charge? Because if it's your emotional center, you're going to have to react and behave in a different way. And you're going to react in a different way to your logical center. And so if you are mindful and you can say, oh, I shouldn't be moving in this direction, that's great. And that's good. So that brings us collectively now to the end of module 1. And I'm just going to, let's go into the Q&A. I've got the Q&A up now. So if anybody wanted to just put a quick question in the Q&A, Hopefully, let's see, 9:36. Yes.
Let me help
Hopefully
you
I'll
with that part, Charles.
Pardon?
Let me help
Pardon?
you with the questions. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So one of the questions again is, should suppressing of emotions be mutual to have a good conversation? Is from one of the aspects for Tariq.
No, I think that's a really good question. No, they shouldn't. You shouldn't suppress emotions because it's important to show your emotions in a conversation. But when you're having a difficult conversation, and I'm just taking this from the perspective of you're a manager here, then you actually should just be aware. Because if you get of your emotions, because if you get too emotionally involved, you are actually crossing a boundary of your responsibility, and then you end up getting on the side of the other party. So you show your emotions and show empathy and understanding, and we're going to talk about that later on in the course. So I think you just be mindful of going too far with your emotions. Do we have another question, Nick?
Yes, we do. Do some difficult questions involve high emotion?
Oh, definitely. And it's we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on today and how we manage that. I have, in my experience, been in some very high emotional conversations. But this training, what I'm inviting you to consider here is how you can control those and make it a positive experience for both parties. Maybe one more, Nick?
Yes. Is there a difference between feelings and emotions, Charles?
Now that's fascinating. That whoever asked that great question or where they come from, that's brilliant. Is there? I'm going to say yes, there is, and it's on my bookshelf actually at the moment. I'm not going to get the book, but I want to refer you to back to Professor Damasio, because he, in his book called Searching for Spinoza, and Spinoza was a 16th century philosopher, and who lived actually the same time as Descartes, and in this book, he stratifies how an emotion arrives in your body through neuroscience. So if you're interested in that, and it's a really, really readable book, and it starts sort of deep, and feelings start at the bottom. They're at the bottom of the tree, and he moves up to how a feeling involves with your neurosystem, and then how that manifests itself. And this is the really clever part, and it's actually a part of the human psyche and being that really is not well understood. And he has a really good go at having a crack at this. And it's about how that moves from just being a feeling, a sensation. It's like when you're walking down the street, you get a feeling. Oh, someone walking behind me, or something like that. And then that comes out to an emotion. Then you get an emotion. Maybe I better walk a bit quickly, or maybe shall I turn around and see who it is? Because then you get an action. So I hope that answers the question. How's that? Right. I think I've got a poll here, and I'm just going to launch this poll. Be quite interesting. And it's a little recap maybe on question 1. I just think, in your opinion, I would like to know, why do difficult conversations occur? I'm just launching the poll now, and we know there are 3 options, but I just want to feel that which one do you think they are? Which is the strongest? Very interesting results coming through. That's good. Okay, I'm going to let the poll run just for a few more seconds. I think it seems to be nicely balancing itself out here. We've got nearly most of the participants on, which is great. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, and I'm going to share the results. Okay, here we go. So the top one is when there are different, you think, where there are differing opinions and perceptions. And the other one is when feelings and emotions run strong. I think between you, you've absolutely nailed it on that. But also it's really important, when the consequences or stakes are significant, and I think it's that element that you actually get a feeling of, where am I going to take this? So that's equally important. So really great. Thank you so much for that. That's fantastic. Okay, we're now going to move on to module 2. Now, this is where we start to get into a little more of the detail of all of this. And I want to go into, we're going to look at choosing to have the conversation. We're going to look at the types of participation. I'm going to introduce you to having a value check for having a conversation. And then we're going to go and have a little look at a checklist. So choosing to have the conversation. Well, the first thing we need to be thinking about is, what do we need to consider? And the first thing we've got is, you might want to consider, is this my problem? Now, it may be that you're just the first person arriving in the room or in the office of that day, and you are challenged and someone is letting off steam. It's just, it's not your problem. It's nothing to do with you. And maybe you thinking, okay, I'm going to listen, but I don't really need to engage in this conversation. And you could just say, well, look, thank you very much. That's really interesting. I see that that's quite important to you. Maybe you want to have a conversation with your manager, or maybe you want to go to HR or something like that. So the first thing is realize and have an understanding, is this my problem? However, if we move on to maybe, well, yes, I think it is. Should I seek advice? That's the next question you need to ask yourself. It could be something to do with that you're not a specialist in this area and you want a little bit more support. It's not your field, and you may have to go to your manager, your boss, or you may need to go and speak to, let's say, another department. It could do with a technical issue, which you're doing at work. You may have to go and speak to another engineer. And have the conversation. Say, look, so-and-so has come to me with this, and I think it's about this. What do you think? And they go, yeah, I think you're right. You're okay. Just tell them so-and-so. And then you can have that conversation. Alternatively, they may say, no, you send him to me. Now, I've actually often had many of these, and these are actually quite common because someone comes to you with an issue. And if someone's come to you with an issue, it is important to them and they need to be able to deal with it. So you need to manage that. You need to decide, should I act now? What do I need to do next? And often we find that nipping something in the bud quickly is really good. And how you go about doing that is your decision. And we're going to come to that at the end. And the other thing you need to consider is, should I deny there is an issue? Should I just walk away from this? Well, my advice and my experience on this is that if something is coming towards you on this, you really do need to take note. Something in psychology is called cognitive dissonance. So that when you're aware of something here, aware of an event which is happening, so yeah, that's fine. Oh, that'll never happen to me. Oh, I don't need to do this. And then all of a sudden, it does happen. And then you do need to do with it, and it bites you quite hard. So that's to consider. If you don't have the conversation, will it have wider implications? And because these things have a habit of spiraling out of control, And so that is something which I advise you just to consider as well. But the last thing which I think is most important, what is the right thing to do? You know, it really is important just to consider that. Because I have found that through my career and my experience, you get a little twang inside to say, actually, the right thing to do here is I just need to sit down, we need to have this conversation, and so we can both move forwards. And I think if you just consider those as a framework to start with, then that will put you in really, really good stead. Okay. We're now going to consider willful participation versus forced participation. I did say we're going to get quite detailed. And firstly, what is willful participation? Well, willful participation is all about having a mutually agreed arrangement just to have the conversation. And that is because both people trust each other. Both people say, yeah, we need to have this conversation. It might be on a challenging subject, but it's important that we do that. And the key thing here to recognize is that the conversation is needed, but by both parties wanting to have the conversation, they are motivated by it. And if you're motivated, you know, that's an emotion, then you can have a calm conversation. You're already in the right space. So going back to some of the early questions, you have a positive emotion here. You are motivated. So that's good. So you can bring that enthusiasm into the conversation and bring that to the table. And because you're already connecting to that, and that's a great starting point. So forced participation has a different meaning. And that's where we say, for example, I'm the manager and I invite you to come in and have a conversation. Now, you're not aware of the subject and you just don't know what the nature is going to be about. Were you planning, aware of how planning the conversation? And I'm asking you, I'm telling you, you're going to have that conversation regardless. So just pause for a moment. What do you think your first reaction is going to be? Do you think it's going to be, oh, great, Charles is inviting me for a conversation, let's go? Or is it, I wonder what Charles wants to speak to me about. What's going on here? What have I done? You're already getting a little bit defensive because that's your reactive center already going off. So that nicely leads us to what you can see on the screen, this nice 2x2 sort of matrix box square here we have. Now, what this is showing us is that how people communicate. And each person can be in a different sort of mode. So if someone is in a reactive mode, it means that their conversation is going to be more emotionally charged. It's not necessarily going to be logical. However, if they're in logical mode, it means that the conversation is going to be more calm, more socially acceptable, and it's got the chances of being measured and consistent all the way through, where people can have a nice, appropriate, mature, and in-depth dialogue. So what here is the ideal conversation? Well, just if you just look here, you've got logical to logical. So that is where I'm putting you in the ideal space. Now, if I've got my logical mind going, but you are in reactive mode, there's going to be a clash. And then equally, if I'm in reactive mode and you're in logical mode, then there's going to be a clash as well. And I've been there. I can remember a couple of times, or maybe more than a couple of times in my military career that something's gone wrong. And you know, the manager, you're in charge and you know something is going to happen and your boss is going to say, I need a conversation, Charles, on this. And I see it happen, and you go to the team and you go, guys, what's happened here? You know, you're already emotional, and they're just calm and say, no, it's fine. It's this, it's this. You know, the conversation is not quite gelling. Now, the worst scenario is reactive to reactive. And just like in that video, you saw, even though the manager wasn't getting excited, it got difficult. They were fighting. And so what was left? What was left when she walked out? Just more hassle. There was never a positive conclusion. So that's why I just bring you nicely round back to that top left-hand corner. It's all about being mindful. It's all about being in control. So I'm not saying that, you know, you're not ever going to enter into a difficult conversation, but I'm just asking you to be aware of how these things can go. Okay, now we have moved through this really, really well, and we've got some good time. So I've allowed plenty of time at the end. So if we would like to do a little bit more Q&A, Nick, I think that would be great. And then we'll be going within about 5-10 minutes, we could go into a break for 30 minutes. So Nick, do you have any questions?
I do. I've actually got quite a few right now.
All right, good job. We got 10 minutes then.
Okay. So one of the questions is how to change the person on the other side from reactive mode to logical mode. Oh,
excellent. Now, I got to be a little bit careful how I answer this, because we are going to cover that as we go through. A little bit more today, and also we're going to cover that detail tomorrow and give you the skills and some tools and techniques to be able to do that. But just to focus on this now, I think there are two aspects. Firstly, it's very, very important that you manage yourself. Now, I mentioned the word mindfulness, and there's awful lots now going around, in particular in UK, about the importance of mindfulness and what does that actually mean. It actually means being aware of yourself, being present in the situation, and being conscious of what is going on around you. And by being mindful, then if I'm having the conversation with you and I notice through your body language, through your expression, that you're getting a little bit excited, then I need to react to that. And I need to help the person come out of that mode and get back in tune to the logical mode. And I do that through good questioning technique, good listening technique. Which I'm going to talk about, but I also do it by giving the conversation space, by not rushing in and leaping forward and trying to either help them out too quickly. You've got to allow people time to just to think and realize. So two things: one, being mindful and being aware, and then two, by helping the other person and bringing them back round and trying to remove those emotions. And I'm going to talk more about techniques as we go into the course on that. Nick.
So Charles, can I go ahead with another one?
Yes.
As you said, the limbic system is faster and stronger than the prefrontal center. And
yeah.
Then do you overcome such a biological advantage and think logically rather than sentimentally?
Right. So, sorry, Nick, could you just repeat the last bit, please?
So, to overcome such a biological advantage and to think logically rather than simultaneously, could you,
right.
do you want me to go the entire thing again?
No, that's cool. No, I've got that. Now, yeah, so this is, again, a great question. I really do like these getting into the to this detail, because it's so important to understand yourself like this. That where the limbic system sits, if I can just do a sort of demonstration here, we have got you've got your spinal column here, and then you've got your brain, and your limbic system literally sits on top of your spinal column. Okay, and as I said, that was the very first thing, broadly speaking here, in evolutionary terms, which started to develop. It started to develop those sensations to keep us alive and keep actually all other animals alive, because that is one of the most common things we have with the animal kingdom, especially when there's a spinal column there. And what's happening is that all sensations go there first. And that is where you might have heard of the phrase freeze, fight, or flight comes from. That's what it wants to do. It's got to make an instantaneous decision what it's going to do. Now, as evolution progressed, that ability was fantastic. And if you were, in having to survive in a jungle or out on the out of tundra or wherever where there was threat, then you needed to have that. And that is why it is so strong. But as human beings developed, what we developed was our prefrontal cortex. And there's a connection in between the two. And that allowed us more thinking. And we became, through that, more conscious and aware of our surroundings, which, and to be fair, consciousness is still really not understood, how we actually have that. And so what we have now, we have a limbic system, which over hundreds of thousands of years did us fantastic. And we have a logical system, which is really which makes us human, which is what we need today. And the two, we have to manage the two. And it's something we just have to deal with. So I know that even when I come home, if I come home from work, I had a good day, I've done a good presentation at a company or whatever it happens to be, the first thing I want to do is share with my wife and say, darling, come in, I had a great presentation today. And I'm just doing it. It's pure emotion. That's me wanting to express myself. And that's me, my limbic system, sharing that, But the good thing is actually what's happening is for that to take place, those emotions, it takes an awful lot of energy. And you'll find when people are getting aggressive or shouty or even excited, it's actually quite a short space of time. And therefore, it allows, if you get that out, people often talk about venting or just let them say what they need to say. It actually is there for a reason, because they'll use the energy, say what they need to say, and then it goes, oh, I've said that. Then that's the time when your logic kicks in. So maybe just waiting a little bit. Nick.
Okay, I got one more for you, Charles. This is one of my favorites. So in a difficult conversation, there's clearly a wrong side trying to overcome using emotions such as accusing or shouting. So now in this situation, is it important to point out the wrong side so they can act more rationally?
Okay, we're going to have a little look at that later on, because there are techniques which we can do with that later on. You have to exercise some judgment here. It's not that you don't have to say that, because there's a time and place for saying that. But you need to think, should I be saying that? I think it's always good if someone was getting a little excited at me, my natural reaction is, don't get so excited, and you because you do get worked up, and I have to manage myself a little bit. So my advice here was say, well, if they are, just weather the storm, just be a sponge, calm, okay. And then in using your language, you can say, okay, instead of saying, well, you're getting very excited, you can say, I see that means a lot to you. why don't we do it? Why don't we take the conversation in this direction? So again, you're changing the nature. You're using language in a different way. And if we were doing something called transactional analysis, which has very similar things here, we're talking sort of being the adult. What would an adult say? An adult would say, no, just keep calm. We don't need this. You know, I can see you're getting emotional. Let's just ease off here. How's about we do this now? Let's talk about this in a nice, calm way. So you're introducing and you're giving the person routes to follow, because you will get there, and it really does work. Nick, I think we're pretty close to having our first break. How does that sound?
I think that should be fine. If you have one more question to go, I can probably bring it up.
Okay, well, it's I can see there's 3 minutes, so we can do that. Absolutely.
Okay, here's one more. How can you manage the situation where you lose confidence because you have fear of the other person in the interview?
So the question is, how do you manage the other person when you lose confidence yourself?
It's more on the lines of, how do you manage the situation where you lose your confidence because you fear the other person in an interview?
Ah, right. Yes. Okay. I think, again, we're going to look at that in the second part of this, because there are ways to prepare for that. And I think that what is that giving you? But the clue in there for me was that because you fear the person, or you have there's something going on where you think, I know this is going to be difficult. Then it's about preparation. It's about getting your mindset right, because you're going to have the conversation. So there are things that I'm going to teach you to do and give you a framework in actually how to manage those. And I think that's an absolutely perfect place to pause. We can do something about it, but it's definitely something that needs work. And going back to where I said earlier at the very start, with soft skills, it's all about having a go and trying something out. And it's small steps. And it's being able to record those mentally, may even write them down, but it's being able to record those and go, yeah, I actually did that conversation quite well. I was a little bit nervous before I started, but I did that quite well. So I was quite pleased with that. Gives you a little bit more confidence. And every step forward is a great step. There we are, Nick. How's that? Time for a coffee?
Time for a coffee break. I think we can probably pause the session for now, and we'll all reconvene as soon as the break's over. Okay?
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I've really enjoyed some great questions and look forward to meeting you all again in the second session. See you very shortly.
Thank you so much, Charles.
Welcome back, everyone, and I hope you all had a good break. Nick, are you okay for me to proceed?
I think we can go ahead for now, Charles. We'll finish with the break. I think most of the audience is back as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so great to have everyone back, and we are going to launch straight into a case study. I want to get you thinking. You know what I want you to do. So to kick off, I've got a scenario here, and let me just I've got some bullet points there, but I'm just going to paint a little bit of a picture around this. You are in your first appointment and are managing a small team. You noticed over the last couple of weeks that Mike has been developing poor timekeeping. He's regularly arriving late and his lunch breaks have been getting longer and longer and longer. However, he's a good worker. You know, he's a salesman. He gets out there and he's bringing in the sales, bringing in the orders when you need them. You also get along with him really, really well. So you've got a bit of a problem now. You don't know, you know, you're going to have to think, what are you going to do? You already know, you feel inside that the conversation is going to be a little bit awkward. So what I want you to do is have a little think, and I'd like to know what your initial thoughts are. And what I'm going to ask you is if you could just put a couple of initial thoughts in the chat, and then Nick will pick those up and then he'll relay them back, and then we'll just replay a few things. And so you can get a sense of how your colleagues are thinking as well. Okay, I'll leave that to you. Couple of minutes, have a little think, get something in the chat, and then we will get back and have a conversation about it. That's great. What you might want to think about is, what are you going to do? How are you going to approach this with Mike? Are you going to ignore this? No. And what outcome might you want? So, really interested in your thoughts. And let's see if we can share some ideas here. So, Nick, have we any initial thoughts coming through?
They're actually pouring in, Charles, right now.
Pouring in. Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay.
So let me just pick out a few. Here's one from Fahad Taibi. Okay.
Uh-huh.
It says that since he relates to him, he's going to address the matter while hanging out with him outside of work hours.
Okay, so that is someone who's going to say that, yeah, relating just to hang out with him and address the matter in a casual way. That sounds really good. Nick,
Okay.
Some more?
Yes, here's another one by Sultan. So he says that I would make an evaluation for all the members to not have an awkward conversation with him. So
Yep.
That's what Sultan says.
Yep.
Let me bring
Sultan,
up a few more. Yeah, please go ahead, Charles.
Sultan, I think that's a really good idea. You know, you need to consider all the aspects and then make up in your mind what the nature of that conversation is going to be. That's good. Nick.
All right, let me bring up another one. Okay, this one is from Faris. If his production is better when he's having longer breaks, he won't be so hard on him.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm picking up there. So you're saying that if his productivity is really good, that I won't be so hard on him. Yeah, I like that. I like that. And that's probably a good place to consider to start. But I need to add a little bit more to your thoughts there, because if you are seen to be as a leader, maybe favoring someone too much and then allowing that to drift, then you might be condoning or supporting that behavior. So just be mindful that whilst you don't need to go in maybe too hard to start with, that you might need to be, in the interest of fairness for the remainder of the team, quite clear. Nick, shall we have one more?
Of course. This is from actually someone anonymous. So
Okay.
he says that he might be having some problems and he might need some help. So having a little conversation with him, but not at the office, would go. Is that totally wrong?
No, I think that is that's a really good thought, that one. I like it very much, because there's a couple of things for me that's coming out of that. You are already thinking that he has wider issues or wider concerns which are playing on his mind. You know, Mike is a good worker. He's probably got a very good reason for arriving late. And in my experience, if someone is doing that and they're in that and their behavior is outside the norm, let's say, you do need to have you do need to have a conversation, and they might be very, very relieved to say, do you know what, Charles? I'm really glad you've actually taken the time to speak to me about it. You know, I've got a real problem at the moment because my son is at school and he's struggling on whatever it happens to be. And then you can take action. And so again, by doing that in a nice offline, relaxed space, as I said, take someone aside, have a cup of coffee, is really, really good. Great way to start. I like that a lot. Thank you very much. There's going to be time for more questions and interaction as we go through. But what I want to do is take you through my thoughts, how I would handle this, and then we'll just move into the next slide. So I would say I'm looking at Mike and I'm thinking, yes, I do need to have a conversation with Mike. And I would actually be taking Mike, you know, I would take him for a walk. Actually, I worked when I was with Bearing Point. My boss then was a really, really great guy. And he used to have a little saying. He used to say, Charles, or whoever it was, let's go for a long stroll. And it was just an invitation to go outside and have a walk and talk. And we would kick around a few things. And then if necessary, he felt, well, actually, if he wanted to bring something up, then he could bring it up then. And it was a nice, relaxed environment, you know, and I could actually say, well, actually, Udian, I really appreciate you bring that up because that's a concern to me too. Can I have a bit more of a chat about it? So softly, nice and easy. And that's a nice little technique. Walk and talk, really, really good. Okay, let's go on to the next slide here. Get the mouse. What I want to talk about, we're in module 2 now, and we're looking at the anatomy of more of a conversation. And I want to give you 5 common mistakes people make when having conversations. So the first one is falling in to that combat mentality. When you're in that combat zone, you're reactive to reactive, and those conversations can turn toxic. And because we've fallen into this, it actually gets us into what we call a zero-sum game. You know, no one wins here. But there's a different reality as well going on here. It's not only that you are having that conversation, and it is challenging, but I want you to imagine an onion. And an onion has many, many layers on it. And that conversation is in the middle of that onion. And so you're having that conversation in the center, but what's happening in the next layer? And what's happening in the next layer after that? And it gets wider and wider. So if I take you back to the video, how thin were the walls of the office, of that cubicle the manager and the administrator were in? Could the other people working in the office hear what was going on? Could they hear that she was getting excited and possibly even emotional? So what I want you to say there, when you get into this combat zone and things escalate, it can get out wider, just beyond the conversation itself. And so there are two things. You've got the person leaving here and the effect of her going back amongst the team. And then you've got the effect of you as well as the leader. And maybe your credibility here is just, possibly even on the line, but, you have to manage this. So think of this conversation as an onion and how it can expand. Okay, number 2, we do try to oversimplify problems. Now, when you're faced with something, our natural reaction, okay, reactive here, our natural reaction is to rush in because we want to help. We want to make a difference and help that person move forward. But when we're doing that, we can take in what they first say, and then we can oversimplify it. Yeah, I've got the solution. I know what to do. Do this. And what you find, and I found this time and time again, the first thing that the person says is actually not the problem. The problem comes a little bit later on, the nub of that problem. So you actually have to take some time, dive into the detail, let the problem be portrayed out in front of you. Don't assume that you know what you are doing. So don't assume that you know what the other person wants. And because that's a bit of a danger zone there. You need to remind yourself that if the issue wasn't complicated in the first place, it wouldn't be so hard to talk about. So therefore, you need to use very careful and skillful questioning technique. And we're going to come on to that over the next couple of days to sort of unpeel the layers here and get down to the real nitty-gritty and the point of that conversation. Number 3, not respecting the other person's point of view. We're actually in danger of not bringing enough respect to the conversation. And it builds. If you're oversimplifying, you can say, yeah, I know what the solution is, bang, bang, bang. And actually, you don't. And you're not respecting that other person's point of view. And you're trying to resolve it. And if you want to move away from a reactive space, reactive mentality, you need to go further. And firstly, not only respect the person who's talking to you, but you also need to respect yourself and say, I need to give myself time to let this person, to understand what this person is talking about. And you can do that by upfront, when you're reflecting on those 6 points we mentioned before the break, of those things to consider before you enter into a difficult conversation or a conversation that you might feel is difficult. And that will make sure that you can respond in a way that you can later reflect on and be proud of. How you firstly handled that conversation, and that you weren't thrown off course by your counterpart, even if they were being a bit hostile, and actually through your skillful navigation and respecting the other person and respecting yourself, you've got the conversation into a great place and a good conclusion. Now, this 4th one, that's getting too emotional. And we had a question about what to do about emotions and getting emotional in a conversation. And we can firstly get too emotional if we get into this reactive mode and we get tense inside. And I'm sure you've all felt this. And it's not necessarily with a you know, at work or at university. You know, it could be out when you're with your friends. You just get a bit of a tense feeling inside. And, you know, it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be embarrassment, you know, and it could be put you on the defensive. And it's those feelings in a conversation which will actually start to put you off track. Because you remember at the beginning of class when I talked about that behaviors are, feelings are directly related to behaviors, whether they're positive or negative. So what can happen is how you read the person, and that is that what you're taking in, those sensations. So it's the words, it's the body language, all of those come in and those are interpreted. Now, we've got a lovely and a really interesting session on body language. I think that's tomorrow. But we actually take in, and our behaviors is dictated by 80% easily of what we read through what we call the non-verbal language of others. It's only a little bit what we take in about the actual words. All the rest is emotional. And that's what we're responding to. So you can hear certain words and you can interpret certain emotions, and they will trigger these feelings and these reactions inside of you. And so that's what I'm encouraging you just to very carefully just monitor, remember where you need to be, and be mindful and measured. And to be fair, you know, we all seesaw, you know, it goes up and down, and it can move up and down in a sentence. That's absolutely fine. The important thing is that you're recognizing this, and then you can do, and then you can do something about it. Now, the other area I want to go on, and this is the last one, it's a really interesting one. This is about over-rehearsing. Now, excuse me, a rehearsal is actually quite good. And there was a question early on that someone said, what do you do if you fear the person that you're going to have a conversation with? And I think this is one of those areas that rehearsing actually really helps. So, for example, when I was in my early military career, yes, we were on exercise and my soldiers were doing something and it really didn't go well. And it was, I knew it hadn't gone well. And I had to go and see a representative from this other unit. And I just got a message. And the message came through. It was short, it was terse, and it was sharp. And it said, Lieutenant Wattoff, Major Smith wants to see you now. And I'm going, oh. So you can imagine, let's take us back. Was this, what do you think? And you don't have to respond, but just think, was this a willful participation or was this forceful participation? I'm thinking it's forceful participation. So anyway, there we go. And to be fair, I didn't have the benefit of what we're going through now. And therefore, and I go in and I march in and I salute and I do all that. And I must say that without going into the detail, the conversation was one way. There was very little for me to actually say other than, yes, sir, no, sir, this will not happen again, sir, for about 10 minutes. And if I had gone in there too quickly and over-rehearsed and wanted to come out with lots of excuses and lots of this and lots of that, do you know, the conversation would have gone even worse. So yeah, that's just a little story from my background there. But I've learned that lesson. And sometimes by learning lessons like that is actually how you develop and how you learn to control behaviors. So going back to over-rehearsing, you must remember that having a difficult conversation is not a performance with an actor or an audience. As soon as you started the conversation with your counterpart, it could go any way. And therefore, having a detailed script in your mind will actually hamper your ability to listen effectively and be able to just maneuver yourself sensitively around. So my advice is, yes, it's important to actually do a mini rehearsal here. And what you just want to do is to say, well, I'm going to have this conversation with so-and-so. These are the key points. This is how I'd like it to start. This is my plan for starting. I want to ask him about his family or his workload or whatever it happens to be. But then I want to say, what I would like to talk about is this, and then just have a few bullet points. That's all you need. That's all you need. And then you might just want to think, well, what would be a good outcome here? And when you're thinking about outcomes, you want to think about not about physical action things, but again, you want to think about the behavior which wants to be changed. And we'll go about that in a little way. So don't over-rehearse. Just think about it as a little bit of preparation and then having the confidence to enter into that conversation yourself. Good. Little story again. I've got quite a lot of stories I'm going to float in over the course of this program. And it was when I was in the military again, and we had to do report writing on all our soldiers. And it's something you might have to do as well as you get further up in your career. Write appraisal reports as I think they're now known. And I was commanding my squadron at the time, and I'd written all these reports and I was giving the feedback, and generally it was going well and stuff. But I had one particular sergeant sticks in my mind very, very much so. And it shouldn't have been a difficult conversation, but it turned into a difficult conversation. And that's something you need to be aware of as well. Sometimes you're going in, everything's fine and dandy, and then all of a sudden it turns and you're now in that space. And he turned around to me and he said, "Thank you, sir. I appreciate what you said." I'm thinking, okay, but I've noticed now there was a different tone in his voice. But he said, "You've got me totally wrong." Boom. That was a surprise. What was I going to do? Now, I could have turned around and said, "Actually, I haven't, and this is what I believe." But that would have forced the issue. Would have been like this. What I did say was, "Tell me about it." And I reflected, and in fairness, I said, "Okay, you've made a very valid point. I will now rewrite this." So I compromised and I took it away, but equally there were some points there I wanted to include. So we agreed on a compromise. So I had to be very flexible in my mind and just manage myself there and actually manage his expectations. So yeah, there's a bit of a life lesson in here. Just be careful that conversations can flip very quickly, and also how that you're going to manage that in the moment. You can't rehearse for that. Right, let us move on to having a value check for the right conversation. And I think this is a fantastic part of this module where we're really going to look at this and give you a framework now where you could actually take forward and put into practice. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to put this into practice. So let's go back. We've got, you're dealing with someone with a promotion and it didn't go their way, and they're feeling a bit disgruntled, and now you're thinking this is going to be a difficult conversation. Here is a checklist for you to think about times to consider. And this works if you are in the professional space or even in your personal lives. So whilst you've got on the slide here, you've got them listed. I want you to think of this as a square with each of these with the right time, the right place, and the right agenda and the right way. Okay, and we're just going to explore these. So with the right time, if you choose the wrong time, for example, a person can't come in and listen to you correctly, or the conversation is going to be rushed, and therefore the communication is less likely to work. You must have the right amount of time to get that point across. And because if you get this wrong, it's only going to compound the issue. And it'll make things worse. And both parties, you and the other person, are going to feel frustrated that you cannot talk about the situation properly because you haven't got enough time. So make sure you have the right amount of time and to put across your point of view and listen. Let's have a look at the right place. Now, if we get the location of the conversation wrong, it's hard to concentrate on what the message is. So again, this will agitate your reactive center. So you must make sure that if the conversation is going to be a difficult one, that the location is private enough for you both to have a proper conversation. It doesn't help, as I mentioned, if the walls of the office are too thin and people outside can hear. And I've certainly been outside an office and you can hear what's going on, and blimey, you just look at what people are saying. If there's a right ding dong going on in there, it's really not very good. So something to consider, the right place. And that's for you to decide. One of the areas for the right place is actually trying to find some neutral territory. So you remember I said a good way to have a conversation is a walk and talk. That might be good as a starting place. Outside, some fresh air. We need to now look at the right agenda. And there are two pitfalls here. The first one is a hidden agenda. And the second one is if we start with the wrong agenda, then you're only going to make the conversation worse. So if I ask someone to come in and I start with, yeah, it's going to be a nice day, we've got to look at the figures, and then bang, go into something else, and I've got a hidden agenda there, it's going to go wrong. And if the person coming in doesn't understand and allows them time to think first, then it's going to go wrong as well. So just to improve your chances of success, I've got a quick tip. Don't make the agenda too difficult to address. Break things down part by part and allow time for that. Remember on the previous slide, we said don't over simplify it, but equally now don't make it too complicated. Just say we need to address this, because you'll find that those individual subjects are enough in their own right for you to be dealing with. So you communicate that to the other party as well, and you both come to the table with the right agenda. And finally, let's look at the right way. You might actually want to decide or consider what's the best means of communicating here. I mean, we talked about, do I have to have the conversation? Well, that's an option to start with. Should I email, or should I just have a quiet conversation? So whilst, you've got to be careful here, not get it wrong, there are two clear advantages. The first advantage is gives you time to construct carefully what you want to say. So that's good. And now you're connecting with your logical mind. The second advantage is that it gives the other person time to digest on what they want to talk about. And even sometimes you have to get a third party in. That might be something. So this little framework here, very easy to remember. And I really encourage you to think about using this and referring to this every time you have a conversation. So here is that checklist. And we go, can I avoid this conversation? So we've mentioned having a quiet word. That is great. One thing I've learned about my leadership and in positions of responsibility is that having a quiet word and just being aware of what's going on will make you 10, 20, 100 times more successful as a leader and as a manager. And just by saying, can I have a cup of coffee and a chat? Then you could actually move things forward very quickly. We also then want to look about being approachable and being in touch. And if people feel that through your demeanor and how you are portraying yourself, that, yeah, they can actually come and talk to you. Do you know what? I've got a problem today and I'm going to go and talk to Charles about that. He listens. He's approachable. He's got an open door policy. And he likes to help me. And I know he's going to help me get the best thing. And so that is a really good keystone, a platform of your leadership. That's excellent. It's not guaranteed to avoid having a challenging conversation, but it certainly will help avoid it. Now, moving up the scale a little bit, can I avoid this conversation? Well, you might want to consider your value checklist here. We've now got into a space where we know that you're going to have a conversation. We know it might be a little bit difficult. So in that moment, can I avoid that being challenging? So great place to start. Consider your value checklist. That's what I want you to do. Get those corners all pointing to you in the center. So you are you've got the right way to have that conversation. That's all, and that's all work you can do beforehand. And then finally, I want you to consider the potential outcome of that. What I want you to do is avoid the episode, what we saw in the video, where the lady just said, oh, I've had enough of this and I am walking out. You really do not want to get into that space, because both parties are now in real deep water and it's very, very difficult to swim back ashore with that and shake hands and move forwards. So you need to maneuver yourself to think, I'm going to have a difficult conversation. I need to think about this. What is the most positive, proactive, and appropriate outcome for this? And again, you might just have to compromise. You need to listen to the other person. Okay, that was a great checklist. And here we go. Here is a poll. So I'm going to launch a poll in a second, and I would like to know what is the most common area of difficult conversation. Wrong button. There we go. Hopefully we're still there. And let's just get onto poll 5. Right, I'm going to launch a poll which will, there we go. I want to know what is the most difficult conversation you've had, which is in your experience. Here we go, launching the poll now. Very interesting results coming through here. We're looking about halfway is with personal relationships, okay, which I can talk a little bit more about. This is really, really good. Thank you so much. And then we've got coming in at the moment around 31%. It's with a manager. Then with a colleague. And here we go. I think your tutors will be pleased with this one. Coming in at the back is with a tutor, which is really good. So let's just run it for a few minutes, or a few seconds longer. Okay, I think we've got the majority of you now. I'm going to close the poll now because I want to share this information with you. So thank you so much for coming back. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So I will just go through these. So you can see, interesting, that about half, the most difficult area of conversation is in a personal relationship. Then we're looking at 33% with a manager. Then with a colleague at 10%. And then finally, which is great news for your tutors, with a tutor. So yes, personal relationships, very interesting here. I think very happy in Q&A to answer a little bit more about that so we can dive down on that. But I will probably refer quite a bit to that value check. That's really important. So I'm going to stop sharing that now and close that. And let's move on. So here we go. A little bit of question time. Nick, I think you might have one or two come in. So let's see what we can come up with.
All right. Just give me a moment while I filter through this, Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst Nick's just looking at that, yeah, I have found that I think one of the things with personal relationships is that you've got a lot invested. You've got a lot invested in there. And when you heavily invest in something, then you really do, you are committed and you want the best. You want to feel there's something coming out of this. So when you are having those conversations and they are getting difficult, that's when it does get more challenging. And so I fully understand and empathize very, very, very much with you with that.
Okay, Charles, I think I have my first question. So the first question is from Michelle. So the question goes, what's the difference between the hidden agenda and the right agenda? And what should I start with? Okay, so the question is, what is the difference between a hidden agenda and the right agenda? And what should I start with? Yes. Okay. Well, a hidden agenda is when you enter into a conversation and you start with one subject, but actually you want to talk about something else. And you're not really sharing that other agenda with someone else. And therefore you're going to come in and you may be asking questions around that. And the person will be thinking, oh, that's a strange question. Why are they asking me that? And so in a way, you're leading someone on with a hidden agenda. You're being a little bit devious. And it's really, really not a good place to start for two reasons. One, you're not going to get a value conversation. And two, it will come around and bite you. It really will. And I put my hand up. I've probably had conversations where I've got in one way and I want to get to a different place. And you know, we all do it, I'm afraid. So hidden agendas is where you've got a different outcome which you want to achieve and you're not sharing that. The right agenda is to be honest with yourself, and you know that, and I know that where I am. And so you're going, this is what I want to talk about.
this is where I'd like us, this is what I'd like us to discuss. Is that okay? And so you're inviting that person to have the right agenda. And that is a core thing with leadership, is integrity, a core thing. And people will respond to that, and they know that when you're sharing that honestly. Nick, do we have another question?
Yes, this one, someone wants to remain anonymous, Charles. So here's the question. So how do you confront people about their wrongdoings without being mean or patronizing them?
Okay, so the question is, how do you confront people without being mean and patronizing? Is that correct?
Mean or patronizing them about their wrongdoings.
Yeah. About their wrongdoings. Okay, yes. At times in a conversation, you have to be clear, and we're going to talk about clear language. And it's important that you answer, and you answer questions honestly, and you get your point of view across clearly. And so in your preparation, you might want to have a couple of bullet points. It is X, Y, Z, and you need some facts. That's the important thing. You need to attach a fact to an emotion and to a saying. So you could say, let's say to Mike, in our situation there, Mike, unfortunately, I do need to raise this. I have noticed that you've been taking some longer lunch breaks. In particular, last week, I think you were late in after lunch, but possibly on 3 occasions. Am I right in this? And so by being kind and considerate, but pacific, you are giving someone the opportunity to respond logically. Maybe one more question, Nick, and then we'll go into module 3, please.
Sure, Charles. Actually, I have one more in mind right now. So this is from Muhammad Al-Suleimani. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the question goes, how is over-rehearsing a mistake when actually it helps study all the possible routes of the conversation? Routes, I mean. So,
okay.
Want to repeat
Mohammed. Yeah, Mohammed, thank you very much for your question. So the question is, how do you avoid over-rehearsing when there may be multiple routes and options in the conversation which you want to consider? Is that right, Nick? Okay, excellent. The honest answer, Mohammed, is that this comes with experience. You need to know when and how to choose the nature of your battles and the conversation that you want to, and the way the conversation wants to go. As I mentioned, if you over-rehearse, what you do, you overcomplicate things, and you're thinking, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it that? And you're not, and what's that doing? You're trying to work out which strand you need to answer and what prepared answer you have. I'm afraid life doesn't work like that. You can't be too rigid. You can't be like a metronome. Tick tock, tick tock. It doesn't go like that. You need to say, well, this is where I want to be. These are the facts, and then work with those. Now, the good news is, I think you'll find certainly as you embark on your professional career, you won't be involved in heavy, deep, meaningful, and complex, difficult conversations, but you will get some. And so just bear in mind that these are my options. This is where I want to be. Let me hear. And then through that judgment and that experience, you will get better and better and better. So thank you for the questions. We'll return some more questions shortly. And we're now going to look at working with difficult conversations. So in this module, I want you to consider in a little bit more detail the background of the conversation and maybe how you're going to prepare yourself. So firstly, we know that there are a variety of reasons why you may have a challenging conversation, with pay being right up there on the top. So you're going to be faced with a variety of scenarios to deal with. Now, you have a choice to go into a conversation as either a logical communicator, where you're going to remove the emotion, to a degree from the speech, and you are going to choose your words carefully. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be dull, monotone, and speak like a robot. They don't want that, and that's not going to work. You need to blend. You need to blend in your emotion with that logic, but have the logic keep control. Or, on the other hand, you can go in like a bull in a china shop, and as a reactive communicator, full of emotion, and you're evoking that response in others. Okay. And here we have these two, and that's nicely summarized here. Two different types of communication, logical and reactive. Logical removes emotion and chooses the words carefully. The reactive communicator is full of emotion, evokes emotion in others. And you can see, look at this girl in the slide there, in the picture. We're going to do about reading body language, but just think what she is doing. Is she exasperated? Is she cross? Has the person got their message to her? Is she upset? Is she insulted? How is she going to react? Very, very important. So here we have the consequences of each stance. If you are in a reactive space, then these are the sort of things which you might be thinking about. The first thing is you think you're going to win. You want to win. That's what you're inside. That's what it is. Fight, flight, or freeze, fight, or flight. That's what it's all about. You want to win here. You're going to express your emotion, just like that manager did. He was calm in the video, calm to start with, but then he started to turn up with these little jibes. You could see he was getting irritated under the skin. You've got to attack the other person. And actually, it's quite interesting. You can attack the other person by something, what we call as being passive aggressive. Now, being passive aggressive means then I'm saying something to you. It may sound nice, it may sound easy, but actually it's a little barbed. It's a little, it gets you in here. You're thinking, that wasn't, I didn't quite like that, and it's designed so that, if I'm being passive aggressive to you, I want to influence you in a way that isn't really healthy or isn't really good. So that's something to watch out for. If you're in a reactive agenda as well, you want to defend yourself. And you don't see yourself as the person at blame here. Remember what that lady in the interview wanted to do. She wanted to say, oh, it's Jim's fault. Jim in the post room. He didn't send the stuff out. Oh, that's someone else's fault. They're over there. Oh, you are not doing your job properly. You're accusing me, but you're not doing your job properly. These are all reactions of being defended. So that's something to be aware of. They always want to get across. If you're in reactive, you always want to get off your point of view. And it's about interrupting. So I might be trying to get something over to you in a very calm, considerate manner, but you keep leaping in. Bang, you're in there. Oh, it's not me, it's his fault. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And, it's very difficult because, one, you're putting me off my thread, which is challenging. So I need to manage myself in that space. But you're clearly not letting yourself understand where things are. okay, something on a previous slide. You know, that reactive center is focusing on, it's focusing on the problem and not focusing on the solution. So if you're focusing on the problem, you're not giving way. And it's that not giving way is a real difficulty. And that interview, what we saw at the beginning here, neither gave way at the end, and it ended explosively. Now, let's move into the consequences of the logical agenda. Now, this is good. This is the right space you want to be. Now, you want to be understanding. You want to allow yourself to enter that other person's world. And you do that by being empathetic. And you can be empathetic, as we'll talk about over this course, by your non-verbal body language. So I'm listening to you. If you're speaking to me now, I'm listening to you, and I can give you subtle movements. I can give you, yes, I can nod the head a little bit. You know, maybe I could move forward. Maybe I could note down, you know, that's really interesting. Just bear with me. I just want to note down that point. Thank you for that. You know, and by doing that, you are connecting, and you are allowing that person to calm down and come, and you are entering joint worlds together. And that's why, if you're in the logical stance, you want to listen and weigh up the information. I mean, if you just, it hits you and then you fire back very quickly, you're not allowing yourself to give yourself those options. And I think that's just returning to Mohammed's question earlier, that, you know, you will have considered some options and where you want to go, and you need to allow yourself time to connect with those options. So let's just take this. It could be about an engineering solution. It might be on a design you've done, and you might have someone from a platform come in and say, "Hey, hi, boss. You know, this isn't working. Really isn't working. You said we needed to do this, and you said we needed to do that, but it just, the dials, it's just not reading like it should do." If you leap in and go, no, it should do. Just go back, reset the switches, go back. It will work. And if that's all you do, then, you know, you've probably lost credibility, especially if it's not working, point number one. And actually, you're not doing any favors. You're not showing any respect to your work colleague there, no matter what the hierarchical relationship is. So being logical, you allow you to listen, weigh up the information. So you would say to them, well, that's really interesting. Crikey, I didn't expect that. Taking a little bit on yourself and going, why do you think it is working that? And by questions, we're doing that tomorrow, you allow yourself time and space, again, to connect with possible options and solutions. And therefore, that nicely brings me onto that last point there. Want to use facts, not emotions. What exactly is wrong then with the dials? What are they reading? Be precise, be specific. And then it allows them time to think, oh, right, well, in that case, it's reading 30 degrees when it actually should be reading 20 degrees. Yeah? And we know, being engineers, you know, there's all sorts of fault analysis you have to do to get into that detail. You need to do that with that logical stance. Okay, so here we go again. We are going to hit another poll. I will just get the poll ready to launch. Okay, here is the question. So I am going to put on the screen a poll, and I would like to know from yourselves, what do you think? What do you think are good behaviors when in a conversation? And let's see what we come up with. Launching the poll now. Oh, this is great. It's coming on really well. Okay, I'm going to allow the poll to run just a little bit. We've got about half the respondents in, which is really good. Those figures are just ramping up here. So keep coming. If you haven't voted, please vote. Let's get it in. That's coming through nicely. We'd like to see a few more votes. A few more votes, please. Okay, we're nearly on the 2000s. If you haven't voted, please do so. I would like you to. And we will close it in about 10, 15 seconds. So that'd be great. Okay, it's nicely slowed down. So thank you so much for voting. I'm going to end the poll now. And I'm going to share the results. Are you ready for this? Here we go. Okie dokie. Well done. Highest there, 50%. Listening carefully. That, I think, is bang on. Right up there. The key to being a good manager and a good leader, good team leader, and actually just an all-round good person is being able to listen. And I think if you can crack that, then then you'll get on well. But I just want to have a little look at some of the others. Now, it's not saying that some of the others are wrong, or when you look at this, that that you haven't pressed the right poll. It is not that at all. They're all very, very valid. Brilliant. No one has put being devious. Okay, so that's, or let's say no, I think there's probably 4 down there. Well, it's not coming as any percent. So let's move on, but that's not a good strategy. Accepting differences. Love that one. Very important. And we're going to talk about individual differences, I think, on day 4. So you'll really like that. Being open to ideas. That's great, because you're not an expert. No one is an expert in everything. And being open to ideas is a way we learn and enhance and embellish our own knowledge. So that's really good. I love finding common ground. Well done for putting that. And that is important. Everything is a negotiation. Very, very rarely does a conversation go where it is where the outcome has already been predetermined. For me, I can only think of maybe one area actually, and is if someone is being terminated from employment. And to be fair, you don't need to worry about that, because those sort of conversations are really well planned and they are dealt with by senior HR professionals and managers. So that's the only thing where I think you can immediately get a predetermined conversation outcome. Good behavior, focusing solely on the problem. Yeah, and I can see why you've got that. And I can also see why possibly it's a little bit down, but that's fine. Because, you know, a good behavior is you do need just a nail in there. You need to come in and coalesce. What do we need to discuss here? That's great, because if you don't coalesce around what we really need to discuss, then you won't, you know, you won't get where you need to be. Now, 1%, so that's 16, interrupting inappropriately. Now, I'm going to just move around this interruption little piece here. Inappropriate interruption is not great behavior, and it's not good, because if someone is constantly being interrupted, you're not letting the other party express what they need to say. And there are some great conversation things on YouTube about being interrupted. And I think sometimes reporters do it as well. They're not allowing that person, the person they're interviewing, to get their point of view across. And they go, but what about this? And what about that? And in particular, in politics. However, it is appropriate sometimes to interrupt, but it's how you do it. You might have to say, excuse me, but could you just, sorry to interrupt. So you've introduced it, you've apologized, and then you introduce why you want to do it. Could you just run that past me again? That would be really helpful. You're inviting that person to help you out. That's the way to interrupt in a conversation. Really great. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing that poll now. And that was the end of the polls for today. There we go. There's a couple more on there. Let's just point it out. What are good behaviors? Shouting is not a good behavior. Definitely not. We don't want to be doing that. Reaching a joint decision. That's good behavior. Really great. Okay, here's, you'll be wondering, what on earth is Charles going to talk about here? Sam, Dave, and the hedge. Well, just a little story here. I just want to, and I'm going to use this to sort of start to bring the whole 2 sessions of this nicely to a good landing point before we close on a few more questions. So Sam, Dave, and the hedge. Sam and Dave, Sam is on the left-hand side, Dave is on the right-hand side. They are both neighbours. And they're about to meet and discuss their hedge, which Sam owns, which is cutting out the light on Dave's garden. So he can't go out in his garden and have his barbecue and all of that. Now, remember, it's already a tricky situation. Tall hedge, someone wants it cutting, someone likes their hedge as it is. Let's begin by thinking how Sam is thinking. Remember, 2 lines of thought which are going inside his head. The first one is his logical human, which is one, I want peaceful relationship with Dave. I like Dave, he's my neighbor, I want to get on great with him. And he might need to compromise a bit. And he also knows he might need to take a perspective in that whilst he might have a tall hedge, he might have to appreciate that Dave actually needs 3 foot cutting off the top. However, Sam's reactive center is having none of this, and seizes a challenge to his territory and has absolutely no intent of conceding this. He will view, this reactive center will review this as a power grab from Dave, okay? And he's going to think it's an attack on his ego, and he's going to have little compromise in backing down, even to the point of actually being emotional threats and all of that, and body posturing to gain dominance. Dave will also be approaching the conversation with two minds. His logical mind will be having a similar agenda to Sam's. You know, probably wanting to think, yeah, going to need Sam's point of view here. Let's say what we can agree. But equally, he's going to have his agenda, his reactive agenda, is opposite, nearly opposite to Sam's, saying, well, he's taking my light. My light is my territory. So while someone is thinking the hedge is territory, someone's got to think of the light. That's where that compromise has got to come from. So you recall in module 2, where we had that square of logical to logical and reactive to reactive, we need to move this conversation. I don't know what happened to Sam and Dave's hedge. It may have grown taller, it may have been cut. But if they can approach that with the correct frame of mind, I'm sure that they will have come out with a good resolution. Okay, let's bring the session to a conclusion. You've all been fantastic, and I'm really glad you're still with me. Remember, we're looking at frame of reference, positive intent, and to identify expectations. Firstly, you have a choice. And you have a choice of what mode you want to go into that conversation. And I strongly advise yourself to have a word first and prepare with your logical mindset. You also have a choice whether you need to go into the conversation. And we talked about options, and there were 6 options for you to consider before going into it. And we also looked at a checklist as well of how to avoid the conversation. And there was those 4 points I asked you need to consider before you go in. Okay, the right time, the right place, the right agenda, and the right way. Next, understand the context. This is where you must, again, just take a moment, just pull yourself back and think through how you can decide and manage the level of the conversation. And whether this is actually going to be a really deep, formal conversation, or whether actually you can do something by nipping it in the bud, keeping it relaxed, using a walk and talk possibly, or something like that. Okay, so by understanding the context will give you that indication and that key to unlock how you might want to go into the next bullet point, which is deciding on the best approach. So getting the right place, the right time, the right way, and the right agenda is really a great framework by looking at that. Just taking time, getting some facts together, and inviting the person to come to you in the right place. And again, a neutral place is good. Keep away from the formality of your office. And sometimes going to their desk is really good. It's really helpful. I want you to think about every time you have a conversation, regardless of what it is, I want you to enter into the conversation constructively. Always, always, always looking for a positive outcome. And if you have that mantra firmly in front of your head, it will be a really good compass point for you to keep going. Anytime you feel yourself moving and sort of drifting off, you can always think positive outcome. What is a positive outcome here? And then, as some people quite rightly put it out, you can compromise, you can negotiate and meet in the middle and get a good solution. Everyone feels good. Okay, and finally, it's about being flexible. Remember that word compromise. It's very rare that you have a one-way conversation and it's a predetermined out point. Every stage you're going to have to just manage yourself and thinking, okay, I understand that point of view. I have this. I'm going to offer this as a potential way forward. Let's see how this goes. And run with that for a little bit. Then run with something else for a little bit. See what happens. Okay? Fantastic. that brings us nicely on to, we have time, we've got 5 minutes. I want to take maybe 2 or 3 more questions. And then I just want to introduce what we call the recall quiz, which I believe is in your Prism framework portal. Okay, Nick, any questions which are bubbling up whilst I've been chatting?
Yes, they have been cooking up. So let me start with the question from Wasif Hussain. Okay. What if you have an immediate meeting or a meeting without any agenda provided for a discussion?
Okay, so the question is from Wasif, what if you have a quick meeting and you don't have time to prepare an agenda or think about it first? Something like that?
To rephrase it, a meeting without any agenda provided for the discussion.
A meeting without any agenda provided for discussion. Okay, yeah. Don't confuse, let's say, a formal meeting where you will go in, let's say, a big team meeting where there's an agenda there, okay? Team meetings always should have an agenda, which is good. And so don't confuse that with going into a meeting with an agenda. So with a difficult conversation. What I advise you to do here is that if you go in with a piece of paper and with a list of points on it, you're already going to, it's already going to probably become an issue. You just want a small few bullet points, maybe written down, or actually you have to hold these in your head, Wasif, and just go, actually, yeah, I want to talk about this, this, and this. And it comes with practice, and start small. I want to talk about 1 point, and that's great. And then very quickly, you'll be able to hold into your head much more information. It's about practice. Nick, we'll take another question, I think.
All right, Charles. So here's another one by Abdulaziz Al-Namadi. Okay. So the question goes, when you're in a conversation with your reactive person, how do you maintain a logical conversation without allowing the other person to drag you into a reactive conversation?
Abdullah, wonderful question. The answer is, firstly, it is really difficult, okay? And I get that. And I work with clients about that as well, because it's a real challenge. You have to be very mindful and you have to be controlling. Sometimes you just have to let the person have their say. You remember when I said some people just have to vent off. Now, the energy it takes for the brain to do that is an awful lot. And what you'll find is that after a few minutes, they'll have said their piece. And whoa, that's your opportunity. So give them space. Let them talk. Let them get off their chest what they want to say. And then you can engage with their logical mind. And that's by asking a good question. And we're going to do questions tomorrow, I believe. So maybe, Nick, I think we've got one more and then we'll introduce the recall quiz.
Sure, Charles. Here's one from Anonymous, okay? Sometimes I compromise too much that at the end, I lose out on everything, especially when I'm the weaker person in the level of power. How do I avoid that?
Okay. Now, I really, really understand. So the question is, sometimes I compromise too much and I end up being the weaker person. And I really get that. The first thing is, don't worry. It happens to everybody. And sometimes you can't control that. So my advice to you is 2 things. That is, just be aware that you might have to be a little bit more assertive. And we're going to talk about being assertive a little bit later on in the course. So that's a really great thing for you to zone in on there. So I'm going to park a little bit of the answer there. But the other piece is after that conversation, you might just say, okay, I don't feel that went well. And I feel for me that I need to be better. Note the behavior and then make it a goal for yourself that the next time I'm in the conversation, I am actually going to say this and I'm going to behave like this. And we're going to talk about all of these over the next few days, how you can do that. But it's a really, really important question. And by moving forward steadily, that you will improve. So thank you for that question. Nick, we are pretty much on time. If there is anything else, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we can go straight into the recall quiz and I can just introduce that.
I think we can proceed towards the quiz for now.
Thank you very much. Okay. So here we have, there's a recall quiz. Now in your PRISM program, and what I can do is quickly go onto that slide. Here it is now. So go to your PRISM LMS for the recall quiz. And you'll see at the end there's module 3 and it says day 1 recall quiz. And there are 10 in there. There are 10 questions, which I just want you to go. They're all multiple choice. And the answers are all contained as well in the slides. And I think you'll find it great fun. I think there's some nice questions there. Hopefully it'll get the old head scratching a little bit. And then first thing tomorrow morning, when we go in, we will be able to just quickly go over those. And there might be an opportunity as well just for picking up maybe if there's some burning questions as well from what we haven't been able to ask today. So that's where I want to conclude. Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure, and I love talking and I love sharing this knowledge with you. So on that, I'm going to wish you a very great rest of day, and I look forward to meeting you all again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Just a moment, Charles. I think for now, thank you for that. I have one more thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Amber Jamal, our Knowledge Hub's global sales head. He's going to be walking you guys over through the PRISM platform and how to use the PRISM platform in the next few minutes. Okay, over to you, Amber.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Am I both audible as well as visible as well as on the screen share on the PowerPoint?
Yes, Amber, we can see you perfectly fine and we can hear you as well.
That's wonderful. Very good afternoon. Thank you, Charles, first of all. And very good afternoon to all the students and participants. We had to do this overview at the beginning in the morning, but we wanted to get straight down to action. And Charles has taken us through a wonderful session to begin the whole learning activities for your summer session. I'll take it about 10-15 minutes for your familiarization with this whole program and get you accustomed to the PRISM learning management system so most of you could get using it straight away. You can see the program timetable, and most of you are familiar with this from your university communication, I guess, because this timetable would have been circulated to you much well before your registration. While there are 8 overall courses running from today right up to the end of July, these are weekly courses which run from Sunday through Thursday. And the daily sessions have 2 sessions, as you've experienced today, the 11 to 12:15, and then a break about half an hour. And then for another hour, 15 minutes, the second session. There is a daily recall quiz, which can be taken anytime post this session today. And it ideally should be completed before the start of next day, because Charles and the other trainers would be walking you through the recall quiz the next morning. And then, of course, there's a final course assessment, which is at the end of every respective course on Saturday, 12 to 2 p.m. And of course, these are the LVC sessions that you attended. I guess Charles has already told you about the classroom setup. We are using 2 primary platforms, the Zoom for the online virtual classroom and the PRISM, which is the learning management systems. Most importantly, before I dive straight into the PRISM demonstration, here are some very important, I was picking up during session, both me and the coordinators from Knowledge Hub, the various queries that students have been asking, and these are some of the most frequent and common ones we found. The video clip links that the faculty and trainers are showing will be provided end of each course in a repository on the Prism LMS. The recorded sessions will be uploaded once a week. That means after the entire week's program, the whole course has ended, during that time, we will walk you through, upload the recorded session for the students on Prism. It's important that you use your email IDs and user IDs, which are consistent right from the university program into the Prism LMS and Zoom, because we are seeing some students use different logins and user IDs. That will create a problem for your attendance tracking and reporting to your university. The syllabus and participation guidelines are available on LMS, and I'll show you in just about a moment. The discussions on any Q&A, just the way Charles has been doing, will be limited to the trainer and faculty interactions on Zoom chat only. For all of you asking about the participation eligibility, once you register, you are eligible to go through all the 8 courses. You can pick and choose, but it's advisable to pick up all courses. But when you pick and choose a particular course, it's important that you attend all the topics. To receive a certification for any course, a minimum of 80% attendance and 75% score in the final assessment is to be logged. This is the first platform, the Zoom. You're already familiar with it. You've used it for today. It's advisable to use a headphone for clear audio. Keep your question answers very pointed. All participants' mic will be muted by the host, Nick, and his colleagues, and ask questions which are short and during the Q&A sessions. And you've been seeing these chat windows throughout the day and where Nick and his co-hosts pick up the questions from. I'll go straight down to the more important part of our discussion, which is the Prism. Now, this is a platform which you'll be using during the offline time. That means once the session is over, all your reference materials are loaded on Prism. The student handbook and guide, the joining instructions, the course content slides that Charles took us today. There are daily quizzes, final assessment, report in progress, and you can make personal notes to these. Now, most of you would have already completed the step 1 of the Prism, which is the registration page. And this is the page that you all went ahead, and this is the link. If you have difficulty, I'll have Nick share this link over the chat right now. Nick, if you could do that on parallel process, that might help students pick it up. And for only those who have not finished registration as of now. I'm seeing a lot of hands go up. It's best you post these queries on the chat window, and Nick will call out to me if there are some important ones. Instead of raising your hand, Nick, if you could take care of that on the chat window.
1 second. Just see it.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of hand raising going on my screen. Step 2 is the login page. Now, here's an important bit. Many students, we observe that when they are after they have registered, then they go back onto what is known as the sign-up page. Now, do not go back to the sign-up page, because it'll throw you an error, and you'll have a verification email come in. And after you've done the verification email, you go straight into the login page and do not go onto the sign up page again. And use your same login, as I said, maintained consistently. Charles just showed you where to take your daily quizzes. These are to be taken after, you can complete before the start of next day's session. There are 10 attempts. And important for you to note that there is no scoring, or it doesn't go into your actual score pattern. It's purely for recall, attempting and understanding and conceptualizing. However, the final course assessment on Prism can be found at the end of your entire week's course. It will not be activated till Saturday, 12 to 2 p.m. Saudi time. Now, while you have the 2-hour window in which you can, with this assessment will be activated, it does not mean you can take your entire 2 hours to answer or attempt the questions. You have only 60 minutes for 30 questions. Now, throughout your entire experience, be it in Zoom, when you're offline, online, any support you need, it's best to go to the chat support on the Prism page, because that'll give you almost the fastest response from my team. That's a quick end of the presentation, and now I'll walk you through the actual Prism. I'm on my live window, and as you can see, I have a dashboard, which is when you first log in, after you sign up and registration, you land up on this dashboard. I have my trainings, which are all the active trainings I'm taking and being part of. But the dashboard is where you basically start your entire journey. Now you click on the session course 1 and soft skills, and then it'll pop up all the modules with all its content. Now it's advisable for you to review and revise this content one by one and not jump. And you could, like today we did 1, 2, and 3. So I was reviewing 3, and as you keep completing these revisions at your pace, you will see the course completion bar on top of that go up. And these are the user guide and student handbook. I'll quickly show you. I've kept it open to save time. This is your entire user guide and joining instructions, which some of you have already received by mail, and others who have not can access this now on Prism directly without having to wait for your document as such. The second document is what we call as the student handbook, and this is the student handbook. I hope, Nick, my screen is still visible and everybody can see that.
Yes, I'm pretty clear.
Terrific, thank you. And this is the complete description. It's about a 27-page on each course, objectives, context, the modules, the instructor. You can know more about Charles from here and your other trainers through this handbook. So these are the 2 quick modules. Now you can go to any of this content and select on the course content slides, and you can see that the slide will come up. And for different slides, you can go and make notes here. And these are personal notes. So I've created a test note, and you can type it here, test again, and submit it, and it'll go onto your notes. These are your personal notes, mind you. These are not for rest of the audience to see. And you can also ask a question on a particular slide, on a particular module, and that'll pop up, and you pick up the type of question on the class and post it, and our instructors will do a group batch processing once in a while. So this is how you access your daily module or the course content. Now, similarly, you can go back to your course, and end of each day, there will be a recall quiz. So here's a recall quiz. And I've kept it here ready for you to see so that we don't have to. So on the recall quiz, you'll find this button, and this is how you start your recall quiz. Any 10 attempts, and this is for a quick go through. Remember, there is no scoring, and I can randomly just push it here and keep going, and it'll show me if I got the answer right or wrong by popping up the answer right there. And Charles will be reviewing why you chose a particular answer, and what is the correct answer, and what is the logical sense behind it. So that's a quick view of, and I think this was on a poll, and it's a different thing altogether. So I think I'll pick this up and submit, and it'll show me a right answer because I guess I purposely picked up a right answer, and then you move to the next one. So each question you attempt, it's a multiple choice. You first submit it, you get whether your answer was right or wrong, and it shows you the right answer, and then you move to the next question. So every day you have a recall quiz. And finally, to end my discussion here without taking much time, is you have the final soft skill test. Now remember, even if the instructions are put right here, and even if I try to start the assessment, it won't start because we will activate this only on Saturday, 12 to 2 p.m. window for the course which concluded in the previous week. So when you have a course week, subsequent to that course week, the Saturday thereafter, so you have time for revise, go over the material, conceptualize a bit, enter into discussions and clarifications, read up a bit, and then come back and take a successful test. Once you take the test, you will find your reports here. This is blank because I haven't taken a test here yet, but once you complete it, you will see, and all your notes that you have taken can be accessed here. So you see on which module, on which particular slide did I take what note for myself, and I can go and visit that again. And I have an option of and it'll go back to that slide and open your notes and verification. So it's a little bit rapid fire. I had to compress all of this in about 10 odd minutes for you to get a high level view, but believe me, there's not much you can explore. The best way to get familiar is explore the tool, the platform yourself. Some of the, it's advisable that we don't get into the advanced feature of discussion, bookmarks, and messenger on the left side menu as you see it. Best is to first get familiar with the top 3 menu. The advanced menus, as we go along the course, as you progress and go into the advanced level, we'll keep exploring and opening up more and more to all the students. For right now, our focus is to get your trainings, to get your dashboard, and get your assessments ready. And this is where you actually start with the course. So you will gradually see 8 courses lined up as we progress week after week. Nick, I'm done. Over to you for any quick important questions, but we have very limited time.
Okay, well, I actually have quite a few questions consolidated on the general concerns that the students are facing right now. So starting off with, some of the students are unable to see the course